Hi, this is Frankie from About Script. In this video, we're going to be looking at memoization in React applications. We're not going to be focusing on Redux. We did that in a previous tutorial. We're going to be looking at particularly pure React code and how we can use memoization to improve performance, mainly by preventing re-renders of components and thus avoiding the diffing cost, which can hurt performance in especially large lists. So if we come over here, we have an example application, we have some Reddit posts, we have a counter, and we have a new post input. So what we need to do is optimize this such that these posts aren't constantly re-rendering. We can tell they're re-rendering because this little square changes on every render of the component. So let's jump into the code. We have some basic state. We have a tick function that increments a counter. Our example app can also have a select a post, and that'll update either the title or the image of the post at the top here. So we render the single one, we render the form, and we render our list of posts. Now we're passing an onSelect function here. The first problem we have is that this is a different reference every time. So if we go into our Reddit posts list, even if we change this to pure component, it's going to render every time because all of these, because the onSelect prop is different every time. So we can fix that pretty easily without any memoization tricks. So we'll change this to this.handle select. We'll create a handle select method. And we'll bind it in constructor so that it has the correct this value. Now if we come over here, we can see that they're not updating. Keep in mind this is green here. If we insert a new post, then it updates to a new color. So we also want to prevent that. So we can come over to our Reddit single posts, make this a pure component. And if we refresh, it's still not going to work, because we're passing an onClick prop to it every time. Now this situation is a little more tricky. What we're doing here is we're using a closed over variable post in our onClick. So we can't just create one onClick callback because each one has a different post attached to it. And if we were to use function.bind to partially apply it, then we're still creating a new function every time. So in order to solve this, we're going to need a memoization function. We can get one from Lodash. Now we need to create a constructor with no state, and we're going to have a function called this.getHandleClick. And we're going to call memoize. Now memoize takes a function and then it returns a function like that function, except that it only calls it when the first argument is something new, and it saves it for every value of the first argument. Also, it uses a map internally instead of an object with string keys, so we can memoize the entire post object or the post ID. We'll just do the post object in this example. So we have a post, and then this function returns a click handler function. So that's going to take an event, but we're going to ignore that argument. And then we're going to call this.props.onSelect post. Now if we come down here, we can say this.getHandleClick post. So let's say the post is the first post. The first time it gets called, we pass the post in. Memoize hasn't seen that post before, so it calls this function, which returns this click handler. Then next time it runs again, it calls this function. Then it has seen this post before, so it doesn't call this again. It just returns the same click handler function. So now if we go over here and refresh, we can see that if we enter a post, this is light green, this is darker green, they don't change colors, they're not rendering again. Now memoizing functions is good, but what if we want to memoize components instead? So this means that instead of it passing new props to this Reddit posts and it having to do the pure component checks, what if we return a reference to the same element as we did on a previous render, thus completely avoiding React diffing it? It says, this is the same reference to an element, elements are immutable, therefore I don't need to do anything at all. So we can do that in our Reddit posts here. We'll just change the example a bit. So we'll have this dot get post, and it's going to take a post. We need to memoize it. It's going to take a post, and it's going to return this dot render item post. Then here, instead of calling render item, we'll call this dot get post, and then we can save that. And if we update over here, we have our get handle click, so we need to change that back to our previous this.props on select post. And it doesn't matter that we're using a different reference here because React doesn't look at this on click at all. So if we save that, come back over here, we have our darker green and our teal. We enter a new post and those don't update. So this is even better performance than memoizing the on-click. And that also means we don't need pure component here. You can leave it if you like, it has a very minor performance impact. We have blue and green, we enter a new post, and this isn't called again. Also, if we had a component will receive props in Reddit single post, that wouldn't get called again either. So that's pretty much it for memoizing in React applications. Let me know in the comments what you'd like to see in a future video, and I'll be sure to make it for you. Thank you, see you next time.